Today, we are jumping into the world of Leonardo da Vinci. And maybe forget the sort of dusty textbook image you might have. We're talking about a real Renaissance, maybe a rock star.
Yeah, I like that. A rock star. He was a painter, obviously the Mona Lisa. Everyone knows that one, right?
Right.
But so much more. An inventor, a scientist, an engineer, all during that incredible explosion of creativity, the High Renaissance, roughly 1452 to 1519.
Exactly. And if you're listening and hoping to, get a good grasp on him without reading a dozen books, this is your shortcut.
Your backstage pass, maybe. We're trying to cut through all the information overload and focus on what makes Da Vinci so, well, fascinating and enduring.
Yeah, the sheer scope of his curiosity is just mind-boggling. One minute he's sketching flowers, the next he's figuring out human anatomy or dreaming up flying machines. Centuries early, it's almost too much.
It really is. So we won't list every single achievement. Instead, we want to explore the really intriguing stuff, the things that made him this titan.
Okay, sounds good. So where do we start? His beginnings.
Yeah, let's kick things off there. Leonardo's story, it doesn't start conventionally. He was born April 15th, 1452, near Vinci. That's near Florence.
Okay.
And he was born out of wedlock. His father was a notary, a respectable job. But his mother was from a, let's say, lower social standing.
Ah, right. So a bit of mystery even from the start. I read something about maybe not even knowing the exact house.
Exactly. There's debate. Was it in the little hamlet of Anciano, maybe quieter, or actually in Florence itself? Adds to the mystique, doesn't it?
It does. So an unconventional start and maybe not a lot of formal schooling either.
That's the understanding. Limited formal education in the traditional sense, but his artistic talent must have been obvious pretty early on.
Which led him to Verrocchio.
Precisely. Around age 14, he lands an apprenticeship with Andrea del Verrocchio.
Yeah.
And Verrocchio's workshop in Florence, wow, it wasn't just a painting studio, it was a real hub.
A melting pot of skills, kind of?
Yeah, totally. That's the key thing. Leonardo wasn't just learning brushstrokes. He was involved in sculpting, drafting, chemistry for pigments, even metallurgy, leatherworking.
Wow. So he's absorbing all these different technical skills right alongside the art?
Exactly. You can already see the foundation being laid for that incredible mind that connects everything, art, science, engineering. It all starts mixing together right there.
And isn't that workshop where we get that famous story about the baptism of Christ painting?
Yes. The legend goes that Leonardo painted one of the angels.
Uh-huh.
And it was so stunningly beautiful, so much better than Verrocchio's own work, that Verrocchio basically threw down his brush and said, "I'm never painting again."
Is that actually true, though?
Well, probably a bit exaggerated, the kind of story that gets told later. But it definitely shows how quickly Leonardo's talent was recognized as something exceptional.
Makes sense. And there was another early story, too. Something about a shield.
Oh, right. Vasari tells this one. The Medusa shield. Apparently a peasant wanted a shield decorated, and Leonardo painted this horrifyingly realistic Medusa head on it. Snakes, fire, the works.
Freaks.
So terrifying, supposedly, that his own father got scared, kept it, and sold it for a hefty sum to an art dealer in Florence, who then sold it on to the Duke of Milan.
So even early on, he could create beauty and terror, and people noticed its value.
Absolutely. Shows his power early on.
Okay, so he's clearly talented. By 1472, he's, 20?
Yeah.
And he qualifies as a master.
Yep, master status in the Guild of St. Luke. Officially, he could set up his own shop.
But he stuck around with Verrocchio for a bit longer.
Seems like it. Collaboration continued even after he was qualified. We have his first known dated work from 1473, that beautiful pen and ink drawing of the Arno Valley.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Incredible detail.
Shows his observational skills were already sharp. And interestingly, Vasari also mentions Leonardo having early ideas about making the Arno River navigable. The engineer was already thinking.
Always thinking. So this first period back in Florence, he gets commissions, but some don't get finished. Like the Adoration of the Magi.
Right. The Palazzo Vecchio altarpiece, too. Both kind of abandoned.
Why do you think that was? Just too many ideas? Restless mind?
Could be. I mean, his curiosity was immense. Maybe he got bored, or another project caught his eye.
It's part of the Leonardo puzzle, this pattern of unfinished work.
And then comes a big shift, right? He heads off to Milan.
Yes, around 1482, he offers his services to Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. But here's the really fascinating part.
What's that?
His letter to Sforza. He barely mentions his art. It's almost all about his skills as a military engineer, designing weapons, bridges, siege engines.
Seriously, he leads with weapon design.
Pretty much. He does tack on a line at the end saying he can also paint and sculpt as well as anyone. And apparently he arrived bearing a silver lyre he'd made, shaped like a horse's head.
Wow. Okay, so Milan, this is where things really take off fame-wise, isn't it? Definitely. That first Milanese period, roughly 82 to 99, under Sforza's patronage, that's when we get some absolute blockbusters.
Like?
Well, the Virgin of the Rocks, 2 versions, but it originated here, and of course, The Last Supper.
Well, The Last Supper, iconic. Painted right onto the wall of a monastery dining room, wasn't it?
The refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie, exactly. And his fame was spreading. He even got a commission from the King of Hungary around this time.
But Milan wasn't just about painting for him, was it? He was involved in all sorts of things.
Oh, absolutely. Pageants, designing floats, stage sets for festivals. He even worked on designs for the Dome of Milan Cathedral.
And the horse, the giant horse statue?
The Gran Cavallo, yes. A colossal bronze equestrian statue for Sforza's father. Leonardo poured years into planning it, figuring out the casting. It would have been enormous.
Bigger than anything before.
By far. It would have dwarfed Donatello's and Verrocchio's statues. He made a huge clay model. But tragically, war. The French were threatening Milan, and all the bronze set aside for the magnificent horse had to be melted down to make cannons.
Oh, no. Art sacrificed for war. That's brutal.
A real shame. But it shows the scale of his ambition and the realities of the time.
And didn't he do some amazing decorative painting in the Sforza Castle, too?
Yes. The Sala dell'As. He painted the ceiling and walls to look like an intricate canopy of interwoven mulberry trees, like a garden pergola indoors. Pure illusionistic magic.
Just incredible range. Okay, back to The Last Supper. There are stories about how he worked on that, right?
Oh, yes. Tales of him just staring at the wall for hours, contemplating, then furiously painting nonstop. Other days, he'd barely touch it, lost in thought about the expressions, the psychology of each apostle at that crucial moment.
And the story about finding the faces for Christ and Judas.
Right. He apparently struggled to find models that perfectly captured the sublime innocence of Christ and the utter betrayal of Judas.
And he threatened to use the prior as the model for Judas.
Yes, the story goes the prior was nagging him to finish, so Leonardo quipped that if he couldn't find a suitably wicked face for Judas, the prior himself would have to do.
Cheeky. But it shows how deeply he thought about the characters.
Absolutely. Though that experimental technique he used, painting with tempera on a drywall instead of true fresco.
That didn't work out so well, did it?
Yeah, sadly. It started deteriorating almost immediately, which is why it looks the way it does today despite countless restorations. But its power remains undeniable.
True. Okay, so the French invade Milan around 1499, Sforza falls, and Leonardo has to move on.
Yep, end of that chapter. He heads back towards Florence, but makes a stop in Venice first.
Doing what there? More engineering?
Exactly. Venice needed help defending against potential naval attacks, so he worked on military architecture and engineering plans for them. Then back to Florence around 1500.
And what was happening there? Big return.
Huge return. He displayed a cartoon, a preparatory drawing for the Virgin and Child with St. Anne and St. John the Baptist. Apparently, crowds flocked to see it as like a major event.
Wow. But then he takes a rather interesting job working for Caesar Borgia.
Yeah, that's a twist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Caesar Borgia, the ruthless military leader. Leonardo signs on as his chief military architect and engineer.
Thus has seen some things.
No doubt. He traveled all over Italy with Borgia's campaigns, creating these incredibly advanced maps. The one of Imola is famous in designing fortifications, even planning a canal to link Florence to the sea.
His mind just never stopped. And somewhere in this period, around 1503, the Mona Lisa starts.
Yes. He begins the portrait of Lisa del Giocondo. But what's key is he didn't just paint it and hand it over. He kept working on it, tinkering with it for years, took it with him wherever he went.
It became his constant companion, almost.
Sort of, yeah. And Florence was buzzing artistically then. Michelangelo's David was unveiled, and Leonardo was actually on the committee deciding where to place it. Imagine being a fly on the wall for that discussion.
Ha! 2 giants in one room. He also got a huge commission for a battle painting.
The Battle of Anghiari. A massive mural for the Palazzo Vecchio, meant to be alongside one by Michelangelo. Intense rivalry there.
Did he finish it?
Nope. Another grand project left incomplete. Technical difficulties with his experimental painting methods, again, it seems. We only know it from copies, like the famous one by Rubens.
Another what might have been. Okay, so Florence again, then where?
Back to Milan for a second stint. from about 1508 to 1513, then off to Rome for a few years.
And was he still painting much then, or were other interests taking over?
It seems the balance was shifting more towards his scientific obsessions, especially anatomy.
The dissections.
Yes. He got special permission, apparently, and conducted dozens of human dissections, working with the physician Marcantonio della Torre. His anatomical drawings from this period are just breathtakingly accurate.
Studying muscles, bones.
Everything. Even how the heart valves worked, how the voice box produced sound. He was also deep into botany, geology, hydrodynamics, trying to figure out how everything worked.
Still doing engineering, too. Draining marshes.
Yep, plans for draining the Pontine marshes near Rome. But there's also a funny story about Pope Leo X supposedly canceling a commission because Leonardo was spending too much time experimenting with new varnishes before he'd even started painting.
Always the experimenter.
Couldn't help himself. Yeah. It's also around this time, or maybe slightly later, that there's talk of him possibly suffering strokes.
Ah, okay. Which brings us to his final years in France.
Correct. King Francis I of France was a huge admirer. In 1516, he invites Leonardo to come live and work near him at the Château du Clos d'Orsay, gives him a handsome salary, and basically lets him do whatever he wants.
Nice gig. Did he paint much there?
Probably not a huge amount. He was getting older, and there's that issue of his right hand becoming paralyzed.
Oh, right. That must have been difficult for a painter.
For sure. It might explain why works like the Mona Lisa were perhaps never definitively finished in his eyes, but he was still thinking, still designing. He made that amazing mechanical lion for the king.
The walking lion.
Yeah, that could walk forward. And then its chest opened to reveal lilies, the symbol of the French monarchy. And he was drafting plans for a whole new royal city at Romorantin, still dreaming big.
Until the end. He died there, at Clos-d'Orsay.
He did. May 2nd, 1519, age 67.
And the story of the king being there, holding his head.
That's Vasari again. A lovely, poignant image, showing the incredible respect Francis had for him. Probably more legend than fact, but it speaks volumes.
A fitting end, symbolically at least. So his legacy, it's just immense, isn't it? The universal genius.
That's the term you always hear, or Renaissance man. And it fits. His curiosity was just unquenchable. He pushed boundaries in art and science in ways nobody else did.
And those notebooks. We have to mention the notebooks.
Oh, absolutely. About 13,000 pages survive. Sketches, notes, theories on everything imaginable, anatomy, flight, water, light, mechanics, all written in his famous mirror script.
Why did he write backwards? To keep it secret.
That's one theory. Or maybe just because he was left-handed and it was easier to write right to left without smudging the ink. We don't know for sure. But they're an unparalleled window into his mind.
So his impact on art, it's obvious, right? Sfumato, anatomy, composition.
Completely changed the game. His understanding of light, shadow, human psychology, it elevated painting. And in science, even though many findings weren't published then, his observational approach to detailed studies in anatomy, engineering, geology, way ahead of his time.
And some works just have this enduring fame, Mona Lisa, Last Supper, Vitruvian Man. They're cultural icons.
Absolutely. Instantly recognizable worldwide. Even the search for his bones adds to the legend. Buried at Amboise, the church destroyed, a skeleton found later. They're still trying to confirm if it's him using DNA.
Wow, the story never really ends.
It really doesn't. There's always more to discover, more to appreciate about his genius.
What an incredible journey. Leonardo da Vinci, painter, scientist, inventor, thinker, truly a singular figure whose curiosity reshaped our world. We've really only scratched the surface here today.
Definitely just a glimpse, but hopefully an inspiring one.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Well, think about how those different facets of his work fed each other. For instance, how did his hours spent dissecting muscles and tendons, understanding exactly how the body worked? How did that deep anatomical knowledge allow him to paint figures, like in the Last Supper or the Mona Lisa, with such incredible realism and, maybe more importantly, such profound psychological depth? Where does the science meet the art?
That's a great question, the interconnectedness of it all. Fantastic. Well, we hope this deep dive has sparked your own curiosity. Definitely check out the resources, museums, books, online archives. There's so much more Leonardo to explore.
Absolutely. Keep asking questions.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.